Welcome to Manage to Engage, the podcast from clearandopen.com. Dedicated to the evolution of you, because businesses grow when people do. Serving leaders, managers, and people who will be, helping you reach excellence in your work and achieve your personal goals at the same time. Sign up for the free course at clearandopen.com.
Eventually, candidates are scored based upon the criteria we're looking for. I make recommendations, and if those are positive, they move forward. And so the next, we'll have a total of 4 interviews, schedule dependent. We'll make a decision within the next 3 weeks.
Hi, it's Joseph, and thanks for tuning in to Manage to Engage, the podcast from clearandopen.com. To close out this guest series, Matt Niblock shares how to identify the best candidates for the long haul in a high-pressure job and how hiring managers can create good candidate experience, which doesn't always mean making the candidate comfortable, although any good job interview should still be a safe space for truth. And listen up, the 2020 and 2021 Clear and Open academic year is about to begin with the fall course, Money, From Burden to Freedom. Of all the realms of business and personal management, money holds the greatest opportunity for change for a deceptively simple reason, because it's easy. Money is easier than marketing, sales, operations, customer service, and it's far easier than leadership and management. In fact, if you completed the 8th grade, you have all the math skills you need to manage money. You need only the barest critical thinking skills, and you don't even need much time. Finance, quite simply, is one of the most rudimentary aspects of human existence. Well, if this is true, then why are we so bad at it as a culture? Well, people have problems with money for the same reasons they have issues with God, sex, and power. They have distorted beliefs and assumptions that cause them to behave irrationally and immaturely. Everyone begins, in my experience, with a messed up relationship with money. Everyone. Money in its most basic form is just a symbol of value and nothing else. It's squeaky clean and far from being the root of any evil, but the wounded ego in us changes it into something else. We project onto money our deepest insecurities and then make a mess of it. I've wanted to do a course on money for a long time, and it's finally happening. Money, From Burden to Freedom begins September 24th, 2020 at 11:15 a.m. Pacific Time. The content of the course is practical, proven methods for managing money, which we will use to find your problematic relationships with it. In other words, I'm going to give you things to do, and when you have trouble, we'll find out what's in the way on a psycho-spiritual level. For more information on this and to register, go to clearandopen.com/money. Again, clearandopen.com/money. Okay, thanks so much for listening. Let's start the show. So we've talked about some common mistakes already. It might be interesting to talk about some of the other ones. Definitely selling the job too much, doing the majority of the talking in any case, usually a mistake. We've talked about triggering a fight or flight response. That goes too far. If you want to stress them out, that's a style. But if you go into fight or flight, I just finished Malcolm Gladwell's Talking to Strangers that I know you also were reading just as a coincidence. And the chapter about torture was really super interesting about that really it's the same principle that the science shows that torture is not a reliable means of extracting information. So neither is torturing your candidate. And it's also going to get you badly reviewed on Glassdoor.
Right.
I felt tortured by my hiring manager. It's not a laughing matter, but it's also really funny in another way. I remember, I think there's a, like when I was hired at EMIT literally 18 years ago, I went through probably a half a dozen interviews. And I remember, and I knew they did the hiring seminar thing. It'd be interesting to hear your opinion of. So there were like 15 people in a room. They did a presentation about the company, selling the company first so that they didn't have to later. That was part of the strategy. And I remember looking around the room and there were guys in suits who were 20 years older than I was. And I remember thinking, wow, this was a waste of a 45-minute drive. There's no way I'm getting this job. They said they got 250 resumes for the 2 positions that they're hiring. And I was distraught. And then they did short interviews. This was the style then. They did 5-minute interviews. They'd ask a couple questions and then decide who they wanted to invite back. So I was shocked when I was invited back because I was already sure I'd lost the job. But I vividly remember one of those second or third interviews where basically they pushed me to the edge of my knowing, not in any kind of interrogatory, stressful way. They just kept asking questions until I didn't know. And in retrospect, I see why they did that, because I was a cocky kid. I thought I knew everything. And they wanted to see how I related to the unknown and what the limits of my arrogance was. And so they got me to a place where I was like, I don't know. And in that moment, I felt like I'd completely failed because I thought I needed to have intelligent answers for all of the questions.
Right, yeah.
And I walked out of there literally almost in tears, sure I'd blown it. And 3 weeks later, I had the job. So what do you think about that? And I'll talk about other mistakes people tend to make.
Well, it's definitely a strategy. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? Because they're really dialing in on specific skills, and they might be light on the front end of the screening side of things.
Yeah.
This might also date us too, right? This was what year-ish?
This was 2001, 2002.
Yeah. So that, in a way, that sort of made sense at the time. So that was one of my first recruiting jobs. So instead of heavy duty screening, we'd sort of go to job fairs and see tons of people and kind of do it from there.
You're saying the group interview is dated technology? Is that what you're saying?
It doesn't happen as much, right? So they brought everyone in, but they also had a methodology that worked. Clearly, they had a playbook, right? And I would say if you feel like you have low attrition, company's doing well, you may want to make some tweaks. But whatever playbook you're using, you know what I mean? It was working for them. Mm-hmm. When it comes to sort of the high pressure thing, just one more comment on it, right? Most of the time, we're looking for the skill set of endurance or perseverance or resilience.
Yeah.
And unless your interview, and I've had this too, is a 3-day walkabout, right?
Vision quest.
It's a vision quest. You're still going to get sprint performance.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see. You really want a level of sustainability. And I do think that will come out. So the other thing which was related as far as mistakes is not making conversational, interrogation. Or making an interrogation, question. One of the first things I learned interviewing. So you ask a question, someone answers, you acknowledge, converse on it as much as you think is important. Go back to the question.
Right.
And if you go
mechanical.
For someone just starting off in recruiting, if you're training somebody on recruiting, some people don't know that. They have their script and it's just question.
Mm-hmm. Like a telemarketer.
Yes, and that's what you feel like. That as far as the candidate experience, and it sounds sort of warm and fuzzy and sort of new agey, but that's where we're living now, right? Candidate experience matters because, like I said, we are in an Uber Yelp society. Mm-hmm. It's 5 stars or go home. So
it's brutal.
You owe yourself as a company to be appropriately empathetic. So the other mistakes I would actually just, for any of your listeners, if you go onto the SHRM website, which is good for a lot of things, it has sort of classic interview mistakes.
That's shrm.org, yeah? SHRM.
Yeah. The Society for Human Resources Management. Which has adapted to an extent with the times. They're not as big and clunky as you would think, but they do talk about employee experience, and they're always talking about candidate experience. They have traditional interview mistakes, how people get sort of drawn into some biases.
Well, there's another thing I want to add here, because to me, one of the big insights for me today is the importance of the candidate experience, and that completely fits with the mentality and values of younger generations, millennials and Generation Z. Is that the one after that? right? Because there's on the light side, let's say a zest for life and a passion for enjoying it. And on the shadow side, an entitlement to be having a good time all the time. Insert Spinal Tap reference.
Right.
Having a good time all the time, as Viv Savage says in Spinal Tap. Matt and I cannot go more than an hour without making at least one Spinal Tap reference. So I folded in our final minutes here. If you haven't seen the movie, I'm sorry.
It can't happen.
It can't happen.
It can't be played.
It can't be played. So what you're saying here, I really like, because that's meeting the younger generations where they are. They have an expectation of being treated with a level of respect and empathy, and having an experience like they're being walked into a fine restaurant. And if they don't get that, they may not be so happy.
Well, to an extent, yes. And you want to be authentic about it. But it is now just, data has shown, it is just good business, right?
Sure.
So the data is out there that says good employee experience translates into good customer experience.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I mean, it is, the curtain has been pulled back. The data has been shown. And if you think about that just as a consumer, like when you test it as a consumer, right? So I always talk about the difference between, it's kind of dating me, but difference between Macy's and Nordstrom's, right? I don't really go to either, right? Mm-hmm. But when you walk in, you can tell who treats their employees better.
Mm-hmm.
And that has an attraction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. I'll tell you the concern I have, though, because we have a good sort of dynamic tension here. The concern I have is always if the candidate is treated too well, they may have an entitled expectation that the manager is there to serve them in ways that go beyond what's actually true.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because when I say good candidate experience, it doesn't fit sort of directly into the fine dining metaphor.
Yeah.
Right? It is a great candidate experience actually starts and ends with honesty.
Mm.
So you talk about the ghosting.
Yes.
Right? So you can share with your candidate, hey, we're reviewing what's important to us. You've read the job description, et cetera. Because they always ask, what's the process? Uh-huh. And I share with it exactly. Uh-huh. And already we're ahead of 50% of the game.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. If you have a process and can share it, that's a big deal. Yeah.
Or the sharing, they'll be, we'll call you.
Right.
We'll be in touch. What I say is there's four, most of the time we do 3 interviews, but let's say the current job, I say there's 4 interviews. This is one of them. We ask questions. I make sure you know about the company and the job more, but I always ask direct questions as well. And eventually, candidates are scored based upon the criteria we're looking for. I make recommendations, and if those are positive, they move forward. And so the next, we'll have a total of 4 interviews, schedule dependent. We'll make a decision within the next 3 weeks.
Nice. Wow.
Already there's an exhale.
Yeah. I mean, I'm exhaling just hearing that. And of course, a business, you're not even interviewing. I'm like, wow, that sounds great. You're selling them so much. It's so respectful. It shows them that you're taking the process seriously. They know what to expect. And then whatever difficulty may happen inside that, at least you're holding a kind of context for how things are going to go.
Well, and it also makes your job easier too as a recruiter if someone doesn't make it the process. You've already set this. So again, if they don't, if they don't make it to the next round, I can authentic, and they say, "Hey, I want some feedback on how I did." And I always say, "You actually did very well." Right? I'm not at liberty to share internal scoring methods, but rest assured you did very well. There were 2 other candidates that end up scoring higher that are more aligned, and you've already set the table. They're not going to love it.
Yeah.
But you're at least being honest with them.
Wow. Cool. Honesty, employee experience, candidate experience. Yeah. I like that. I've learned a lot, Matt. But we've been talking almost an hour. So any last thoughts that you're itchy to get into the podcast that we haven't touched
No,
on?
I just want to say thank you. It was a pleasure as always. You brought up some great points as well. Grateful that you had me on, and for our friendship, of course.
Yeah, for sure. This was totally fun. Maybe we'll do it again. This is the first time I've had a guest. Usually my podcast, well, not usually, always my podcasts have been heretofore segments from my webcasts where I'm in the teacher role. But I feel like I got to be in the student role today and learn some things. And
are you saying that I'm the Bill Murray and you are the Dave Letterman?
I think that's what happened today.
Yeah. I've always wanted to pretend to be Bill Murray. So I'm leaving this call on a cloud.
For me, you're always somewhere between Kevin Spacey and Bill Murray. That's for me.
In an old Chevy Chase.
Yeah, Chevy Chase. Yeah, if you were to mash up those
stole
three people.
So much stuff from him.
Yeah, Fletch was. I mean, that was like the movie of our generation. Cash Fletch. I'm impressed. So we'll close it here, and then Matt and I will get to debrief and talk about stuff, and maybe we'll do this in the future. But I want to thank you, Matt. This is an absolute pleasure, and for all your wisdom. And you've got literally 20 times the experience in HR that I do. So it's been a pleasure learning from you. And thank you all for listening. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to Manage to Engage, the Clear and Open podcast. Join us next week when you'll be a little bit closer to who you're destined to be. Until then, know that Clear and Open is dedicated to the evolution of you, because businesses grow when people do. If you want to help the show grow, I'd appreciate you leaving a rating and review on iTunes. All you have to do is open the Apple Podcasts app, view the full description of the episode, and click the link to leave a rating and review. Or you can go to clearandopen.com/review, and it will bring you to the right place. If you're looking for more support on your journey, head over to clearandopen.com for even more tools, articles, and free resources. Thanks so much for listening. Bye for now.